Debate. Thank you very much.
I call Dr. David Clark.
Mr. Chair, we've just heard from that member, Paul Goldsmith, some very rich rhetoric, and I guess that's what we might expect from the member of Epsom. However, unfortunately, the facts will get in the way of that good story. If we examine the government's record, we will find that the growth he has spoken of has not eventuated. The government's record on growth is the worst record of a government in 50 years. The worst economic growth record of a government in 50 years, Mr. Chair. There is over 1,000 people a week leaving for Australia for good reason. People are discontented with the growth or the talk of growth that this government has offered. They want real growth. They don't want talk. We've had 50% increase in unemployment. That member said he was concerned about it and that the government must do better. Well, they must. They must do better. They need to be providing jobs. Talking a big game doesn't achieve anything at all, Mr. Chair. And if we actually look at the record on growth, we can look at the GDP record of the last Labor government, which grew the economy in real terms, Mr. Chair, by 25%. That made the pie 1/4 bigger, and that contrasts starkly with this government, where real wages per capita are dropping. And that is all about priorities, Mr. Chair. When it comes back to vote finance, it's about where the money is being spent. Is it being spent to best effect to grow our economy, to grow the policies that will grow our best economy within the Treasury, and to make sure that jobs are provided for New Zealanders who want them and who want to contribute to our country's future? And that raises a very important question, which was covered in the estimates and related items for vote finance in select committee, where we asked the Secretary of the Treasury about the Crown Retail Deposit Guarantee Scheme and just what work the Treasury was doing, or indeed what work the Minister had asked for in respect of that scheme. We know that it's quite likely that hundreds of millions of dollars were lost as a result of the government's mishandling of that scheme. We know that this handling of this scheme could have lost more taxpayer money than INSIS. This could be the greatest loss of taxpayer funds in New Zealand history. And I want to know, in the current financial year, what government resource will be allocated to finding out just how much money was lost in addition unnecessarily by the Treasury's poor handling of the scheme. And I'd like the Minister, when he takes this call, to tell us how much resource he will be devoting in his department toward quantifying this loss to the taxpayer, quite possibly the greatest loss to taxpayers in New Zealand history. Mr. Chair, a quick look at the estimates tells us that the government's priorities are not Labor's priorities. We know that the asset sales program will take this country back by $100 million a year. We know that because the Treasury has quantified that. We know it was a rushed process. We know that the government is trying to get it through because it's embarrassing. 80% of New Zealanders are against it. We know that 99.4% of the submissions that we heard in Select Committee were against it. And we know that New Zealanders don't like it because it's a bad idea. But the government continues to push ahead and continues to push ahead with its plan to deprive us of revenue that the Crown could have to ensure that we pay off our debts faster and that we can invest in the assets that we all value as New Zealanders over the longer term, rather than some kind of sweet sugar quick fix. We know that the sale of these assets will lead to future cuts in service for all New Zealanders. We're talking about hospitals and schools. Once the capital that's gained from any asset float has gone, the revenue will dry up and we will all be worse off, Mr. Chair. This government is refusing to take the big decisions. That's also clear from these estimates. And we know that superannuation is one they're not prepared to tackle. They're saying it's not an issue till 2020. Well, it is an issue, Mr. Chair. We all have to plan for our retirements, and we need to know with certainty whether this government intends to go on spending more money on New Zealand super than it's spending on the entire education system, or whether it is actually prepared to tackle these harder issues, Mr. Chair. We also want to know about the government's economic management. We know that this government has borrowed more from overseas under John Key than any previous government. This government's borrowing would make Muldoon blush, Mr. Chair. This government's borrowing record is shameful. We know that we need pro-growth tax policies, we need R&D policies, and we need proper savings policies. These are Labor
The
policies.
Honourable Bill English.
Well, there was another visit from one of the aliens from Planet Labor. Funnily enough, a lot of them look the same. Mr. Speaker, just